pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
How are you?
Studio's coming nice.
Start off, we've got Dan Gilrain from Cornell Cooperative Extension is going to give us a little presentation on resilient landscapes. Dan's an entomologist, senior entomologist at the Riverhead Extension Station.
Dan, and before you start, I did print out for the board members all the documents that you had sent me. Do you want me to display them, or is that not necessary?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us. And Mina Becerra, our nursery landscape specialist, is also with us and will be following me. You don't need to display those, but I'm glad you've distributed. Thank you very much. Those are just some things that we had hot off the press. I thought I would share with you and the board members, trustees.
Okay, all yours.
Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen here, and hopefully that'll. Oh, I see the host has disabled screen sharing, so I'll need to
I gotta get there.
have you correct that.
My apologies.
Okay.
Because it's not in where I think it is.
And I thought this would be a particularly appropriate time. Of course, this is pollinator week, as some of you may know. So it's a good time to talk about insects. And as an entomologist, it's a really appropriate time and topic. So I'm glad you had us in to speak for this week.
Can you share now, Dan?
Give it a try. Yes, I can. So there we go. Okay, so I think you can see now. And it'd take a moment for the screen to come up. It always a little slow here, but
No, we can see
it
it,
should
Dan. You're
pop
good.
up in a couple of minutes, less than a minute, I think. Okay, very good. Now I can see it. Okay, terrific. Well, what I really wanted to talk about today is in Resilient Landscapes, Diversity Design, as the subtitle here, is the other living room that we have around our homes, or what could be another living room. This is a place where we like to be outdoors and engage and enjoy the environment that's around us. And it's serving purposes other than just looking nice. And we'll talk about some of that in a moment here. But a little bit first about what I do. I'm an entomologist. I'm an insect specialist, and I have an assistant entomologist, Jared Dyer, you see on the right here. So we have a diagnostic lab where we get hundreds of samples per year and lots of inquiries. Plus, we also have an entomology research and demonstration program, as well as doing outreach like I'm doing right now. Jared is here. He's running a little trial looking at new traps and new trapping designs for an invasive species called the spotted-winged Drosophila, which is a pest of small fruit in particular, and raspberries here is where he's setting the traps up. So he's evaluating these. He's also taking the lead on a lot of our pollinator initiatives. And so we're very interested in protecting pollinators because, of course, we understand why they're important. I get a lot of questions about controlling insects, and we're always looking at novel ways of doing that. On the left-hand side, you'll see is a trial, a picture I took looking at organic controls for aphids. And the good news was that the controls actually worked pretty well. And the bad news is that one you can see also controlled the flowers. So it caused a lot of burning and damage on those plants. Nothing on the label of that product would have led you to understand that. So that's why we do these trials, so we can make the small mistakes and nobody makes the big ones. And you understand that there needs to be more truth in advertising sometimes with these things. On the upper left, little leaf beetles, an exotic non-native species from Europe that's now very well established on Long Island, decimating lilies as it goes. And we have no natural controls for it. So we've been working with another entomologist to bring some of those natural controls, some biocontrols in. And on the left-hand side, you'll see where the arrow is pointing to a little steel blue wasp, and this is actually a natural enemy of the lily leaf beetle. So we've done some releases of these, and we're right now evaluating how well it's established here on Long Island. We hope it has. In the center is a newsletter called Branching Out. This goes out to commercial nurseries and landscape specialists and arborists all around, actually the state and around the Northeast. We have quite a few subscribers that receive this reports every couple of weeks on what kinds of issues we're seeing with landscape plants, so everybody can stay informed and know what's coming and what to do about it. My work is primarily with commercial growers and commercial arborists and landscapers. I don't work so much with home gardeners. We have another facility and on staff that do that, work with them. And lest we forget the economic impact, environmental impact that insects can have, we are surrounded by one that is decimating many of our pine lands. Of course, I'm sure you've all seen this, the southern pine beetle. We were the first identified in 2014. I was very aware this was coming after seeing outbreaks in New Jersey, and I warned our arborists well in advance of what they needed to expect, and we brought in specialists to talk about it after it arrived and what to do about it. And I'm working with the Pine Barrens Commission right now. They're evaluating different traps and lures for this to see if some improvements can be made on that front. But this is going to be changing our landscapes as it goes along, and something of great concern. But the vast majority of insects are not pests, and many of them are welcome in our environment. We want them there, and they're there even when we don't know it, and they may be doing services like pollination or biocontrol that are helpful to us or helpful to our plants and other things around in the environment. So these are the kinds of environments that are very diverse. As you can see here, these are typical landscapes that we see in some places, unfortunately too infrequently on Long Island, that are very welcoming and open to a diverse array of many of these insects. And when you go into them, you suddenly realize what you've been missing all the time, but you'll start noticing all of these different things that you won't find in landscapes that are just made of lawns and a hedge and a hedgerow. But you've got flowering plants that are blooming at different times of the year, different kinds of plants that are hosts for different kinds of things, and they provide refuge for birds as well as for the insects that they like to feed on too. So this is just one example of a slide showing some of the things that people commonly like to have around in the landscapes. You'd like to attract these and have these in. And so you plant flowers that are blooming at different times to attract and lure them in. And that's very, very nice. Mourning cloaks actually like to feed on sap a little bit more than nectar from plants, but they'll feed on nectar too. But these are things that people are interested in attracting. And so planting plants deliberately for this purpose is what people will do. But I'd like to propose another way of looking at that. Why not plant the plants that precede the butterflies, that their caterpillar stages like to feed on? So these are the caterpillar stages of all those butterflies I just showed. And these have their own preferences and plants that they like to feed on. Plus, they're interesting and beautiful in their own right. And sometimes the caterpillars are even more fascinating than the adult forms themselves. And on the right-hand side, I just put an additional picture of a tiger swallowtail caterpillar. You can see this one is a bird dropping mimic, and it's sort of startling the kinds of disguises and the ways that insects try to hide themselves in plain sight from some of their predators. So if you wanted to raise some of these butterflies as well as attract them, these are the host plants for the caterpillars that correspond to the different species that I have indicated here. So this, of course, just changes the picture entirely about the choices that we make in our plants and about what we want to attract. We're beginning to think a lot more ecologically about the places that we live in. And it's not just ecologically beneficial for these other insects that we want to have there and foster and promote, but it also has ecological benefits for ourselves too, and makes a much more welcoming, cooling and relaxing kind of environment. Of course, something has to be said about pollinators during pollinator week, and I'm showing an array of species here. We have two kinds of bees, native ones on the upper part there, a little so-called sweat bee on the left, beautiful metallic green, and on the right is a very cute little squash bee. These are responsible for pollinating our squashes and watermelons and related crops. On the lower part, there are 3 different non-bee insects. One is a beetle on the left, there's a hoverfly in the center, and the right is a wasp. These have not only beneficial roles as pollinators, but their immature stages are also biocontrols for other pests. So they're not only helping on the pollinator side, they're also helping on the biocontrol side. So these are welcome ones to see, as well as beautiful to watch and entertaining of their own right in the landscapes. One of the new I'd say frontiers to be explored and addressed is our own lawns. We tend to see pictures of lawns that look like pure grass, evenly mowed, all the same height, 2.5 inches high. But there may be another paradigm that would be worth thinking about and may be appropriate for some areas and maybe for some circumstances. So here's a study in 2014 by the University of Kentucky that looked at the kind of pollinators that were promoted and attracted to lawns that had dandelions and white clover. And they found that over 50 species of pollinators were found in these environments. And we may not be ready to allow the dandelions to continue to bloom, but perhaps we might consider letting the clover go, not just for the pollinator reasons, but also because of the nitrogen fixing capabilities that it provides to our lawns and helps to stabilize that environment and provide diversity within the lawns themselves. Of course, I've mentioned the insects that are found in these kinds of diverse environments that can be homes to birds, but birds will find just a refuge there and a place to nest. But most importantly, what they're finding there are food sources. If you would like to promote birds, plant an oak tree. This is Doug Tallamy's advice, to consider each plant in your landscape as you should think of as a bird feeder, because of the insects that are attracted to these and feed on these plants are also feeding birds themselves. One of the main ingredients in bird eggs, of course, are insects, and that's also promoting the reproductive capacity of birds and the friendliness of your environment when you have an array of insects to offer them as food. And insects also, especially caterpillars, are really, really good food sources for insects. They have these carotenoids, chemicals inside them that they get from plants that also go into the feather colors that you see on birds, like the Baltimore Oriole on the upper left. So if you want to learn more about this whole initiative from Doug Tallamy, he has this homegrown national park, to reconsider the way we look at our landscapes in a much more ecological sense and to look at the components they have. The purpose of this is really to give you another perspective on what these kind of environments can provide. It becomes a whole different soundscape when you change the kinds of things you grow, whether you're including trees and shrubs, environments for the birds that can supply those beautiful calls in the morning and other times, but also katydids and tree frogs. And you'll also find that fireflies find it a much more welcoming environment. I have friends who have got these beautiful, diverse environments and have the pleasure of hundreds and hundreds of fireflies that are wandering through the landscapes. And it's just a joy to be outside and not only listening to these wonderful sounds that they didn't hear before, but also to see the fireflies that are adding to the enjoyment. Of course, there's other creatures that will find a welcoming spot in these kinds of places too, that will be endlessly interesting, and they'll keep changing throughout the season and from year to year. And these are just a few of the things that I've encountered, even within my own landscape. Here's a picture of something called the beautiful wood nymph on the lower left. It's a moth, actually, trying very successfully to look like a bird dropping. And that's just another way to elude their predators. So you'll be amazed when you see things like this out in the landscape. Box turtles find these homes. They have cleaned up all the slugs in my landscape, and I'm delighted to have them there. Gray tree frogs are wonderful to see, very gentle creatures. And you'll notice a little tree frog in the yellow daylily in the center up in the picture there too. On the right-hand side is a dogbane beetle, one of the most beautiful beetles we have. And on the left is this striking white-marked tussock moth. So these are just some of the amazing things that we'll see in these diverse landscapes if we allow them and if we plan for them and plant accordingly. And as you go out and wander through, you may be inspired, as others have been, by the kinds of things you see, the amazing creatures that are all around us if we allow them to be there. And with that, I think I'll pass it along to Mina, and I'll stop sharing so that she can do her presentation.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Mina Becerra. I'm the Nursery Landscape Specialist with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County. I'm going to share my presentation. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss habitat gardening with you. So I am going to minimize my video just so we don't have any connectivity issues. Let me first bring that, and then let's see. Okay, stop my video and I'll get started. Minimize that, and here we go. So I work quite a bit with landscape professionals, and that's a very diverse group of professionals that incorporates arborists, landscapers, landscape architects, pesticide applicators. It's a very diverse group, and they all serve the South Fork, among other places on Long Island. So the way I serve them is by providing continuing education so they can maintain the numerous licenses that they have. I also conduct applied research for them, so they have questions. I try to answer those questions with research by working with them. And I also do a lot of site visits. So I get to visit beautiful properties and help them troubleshoot issues that they have. Now, these three landscapes, I'm pretty sure I have three different landscapes, but the two pictures on the left, they may be the same landscape, but honestly, it can be really hard to tell because there are dominant plants in the majority of these beautiful properties that I visit. Now, some of that has to do just with design selection, preferences of the landscape architect and of the client, but then a lot of it has to do with the pressure of deer. So when you have deer that can access your property, you're greatly limited in the plants that you can actually have in your property that aren't browsed. So you see a lot of boxwood, you do see a lot of arborvitae, and magnolias and hydrangeas. So you kind of get this low plant diversity. And, some of that is because people also just kind of want this aesthetic to their garden. But when you have this low plant diversity, you end up usually with a concentration of pest issues. So here on the right is a perfect example. It's a bunch of boxwood. And boxwood blight, which is a devastating fungal disease that affects all boxwood, healthy and unhealthy, and it can kill the plant if you don't apply it with fungicides. Sometimes it may not kill some really robust plants, but it will make them look really ugly, so you don't want them in your landscape anymore. And so when you apply these type of pesticides, fungicides, insecticides, miticides, some of the ones that Dan discussed, you inevitably target non-host pests as well. So pests that you don't intend to kill, but that affects the entire area of that landscape. So it affects the entire habitat. Now, what I'm also seeing in some of the landscapes on the South Fork is people are kind of veering away from that kind of traditional formal garden, and they're incorporating, there's lots of orchards, private orchards on Long Island, on the South Fork, and there's also introduction of meadows. And meadows provide wonderful habitat. They provide shelter, they provide food source, whether it's nectar, or seeds, and they also provide water. Plants themselves can provide a sip of water for a thirsty insect or animal. This particular picture, a colleague and I ended up visiting this site because the grasses had lodged or leaned over or fallen over, and this was because of excess nitrogen. It does kind of have a beautiful effect, but this was not the intended effect of the meadow. So I am seeing a lot more meadows and also a lot more perennial gardens, which I absolutely adore. So, with these landscapes, you have greater plant diversity, and you usually end up with greater resiliency, because if a pest comes into the landscape, such as boxwood blight or there's so many other, if you have a lot of ash trees, this is not the best example, but emerald ash borer, if you have several ash trees on your property, it can truly devastate the property. Not only because then your budget may increase because you have to apply a lot more expensive pesticide applications, but if you don't do anything about it, then you'll likely have to remove those plants and introduce a new plant to the garden. So there's all sorts of ways that you can introduce resilience into the garden. And there's various design suggestions, and I just have a few on the screen here. You know, for someone that wants to maintain a formal aesthetic to their garden, you can start small by introducing, you know, some of these habitat elements or these landscape ecology elements by using container plantings. You can put everything under the sun in containers, you know, annuals, native annuals. I have pictured here the partridge pea, which is one of my favorite native annual plants, and hundreds of, you know, you can look at this plant and you'll easily find 5 different species of insects that are enjoying the nectar from this particular plant. Even when it's not in bloom, it basically has these little sugar pods, these little nectar pods that plants can enjoy the nectar that it produces. You can put woody plants in containers. It's a wonderful way to introduce kind of a mini pocket pollinator garden or habitat garden. Without kind of disrupting the rest of the design. Pocket gardens are a wonderful way. I usually, when I access these properties, I usually go in through the service driveways. I think that's a wonderful place to kind of introduce a habitat or pollinator garden. Edge of borders, you know, that edge garden, great habitat. You know, if you want to kind of have more of that wild aesthetic, then if you consider a meadow a wild aesthetic, then the edge of the borders are a wonderful place to be. Whether you have shade or sun, there's all sorts of plants that can accommodate those habitat services. There's a lot of lawn on the South Fork, and one way to introduce habitat is to decrease that lawn percentage just by a little bit. I have been getting more and more calls about how to incorporate meadows, how to build a meadow. So that is wonderful to hear, and they are beautiful to look at. They may take a few years to get established from lawn to a gorgeous meadow, but it's a worthwhile wait. And then, of course, any of these areas where you are going to declare them as a habitat area or habitat garden, you really should omit the use of pesticides. You know, and that includes herbicides, fungicides, you know, insecticides, because some of them kind of do have off-label side effects. And certainly you want to try and encourage wildlife, which includes all animals, you know, insects and birds, to actually use that space and find the caterpillars that Dan mentioned. Something that I think your village can do is promote awareness. A lot of times people just aren't aware that their garden can provide important habitat. You know, oh, what can one container do? A lot. You know, and there are studies that show that our yards more and more are much needed habitat in kind of our very fragmented landscape in terms of our natural areas. So I shared with Rhody various plant lists, because usually people want to know, well, what can I plant? And I love a good plant list. So I shared several of them with her, and many of them now are organized to reflect plants, native plants in particular, since native plants are very hot right now. And it informs you on what sort of insects or animals they'll attract. So I did share all of these with Rhody. So if you're interested in sharing them, please go ahead and ask her for copies. And I hope you do share them with your residents as well. And lastly, there's all sorts of wonderful signage that's available. So residents, you know, if they decide to start a pollinator garden, you know, and they want to inform people that are walking by or visitors to their home what's going on, you know, hey, why are you leaving leaves in this section of the garden but not over there? Well, there's wonderful signs that you can use to inform people of that. Of course, you know, there's Xerces Society, National Wildlife Federation. They have signs that you can purchase, but you can also have a custom sign made up, and you can even create a bronze sign if you wanted to, if you like that aesthetic more so than this kind of colorful sign that you do see around the landscape. And I know Bill had mentioned to me that at the village office, they're installing a native plant garden. So that's a perfect opportunity for you to kind of use more of these larger interpretive signs that really kind of tell folks what's going on and what you're doing to the landscape. And possibly it will encourage them to try it as well. So with that, thank you so much. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much. This has really been a great, informative, quick, a lot of information in a little bit of time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your meeting and thanks again for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you.
You got all that? This is going to be a test. Woods and waves. We got to sit in here and listen to everybody. We don't have to do a thing.
I know, this is a exciting day, right?
Yes.
We've actually had some conversations with Dan about ticks.
Oh, yep.
So we've done some stuff with Cornell and I've done some tick counts for him.
Oh,
So
okay.
whenever, we kind of, it's the first time I've ever seen him, I don't know if he realized who I was either, but usually it's by phone.
Right.
And he's asking me, so, "Hi, what are you seeing out there? What do the ticks look like?" And, give him a report a couple times a year.
Okay.
Do you want to sit, John, or would you like to stand at the podium? What do you
I'll probably
want?
stand up if I can't see it. I might move forward. As I
Okay.
get older, it's a little further away. Go year to year.
Yeah.
I did this presentation last year, and I'm going to change it up a little bit just to kind of talk about, what we're doing going forward. I've been doing this for about 5 years now. So given what we've been able to do, what we want to do, and basically what the residents are kind of hoping for. Not everybody knows exactly what we do or how we do it. So I'll give you some examples of some of the things that, beside just harvesting the deer and pushing them out, how we've been helping residents with deer trapped in their yards, helping remove deer that have been hit by cars that would normally cost $500 to have someone come and remove. I do that for free. I always have staff out here. We also have, dogs that assist us. So people will say, "I smell a dead deer." And what we'll do is I'll go with the dog and we'll go find the deer. And we find it in about 3 minutes. We get it out to the road. We have the DOT come pick it up. So that's another part of what we have here with this program, that we have people that help us that doesn't cost the village any money. So just letting everybody know, if you have that issue, let us know. And often we do it non-lethally. So if we have to push the deer out of someone's yard, I have a couple of dogs that know exactly what they're doing. We open the gates and we get the deer out of the yards. Okay, if you don't know me already, I'm John Rochetta. I'm the owner and manager of Woods and Waves. We've been doing it here for about 5 years. I've been managing programs, not quite this detailed, for 20-something years on the island. Everything from Conic Land Trust to private properties to commercial, depending on what's happening with deer. And it's getting worse and worse. I'm getting calls from people that have never seen a deer on their property further west, saying, "Why are there deer here?" It's simply because they're populating at the same rate with less areas to live. It's just normally what happens. And there's less hunters. I mean, when I was young, everybody went out on Thanksgiving morning and went either pheasant hunting or turkey hunting or deer hunting. Now, we all go to the supermarket, we get our last, few last things, and we have dinner. So you can kind of scroll up from this. You guys know who I am already. This. What we do here is we try to measure, is it working or is it not? And I get a lot of people asking me, how do you know if it's working? How many deer are there in the area? And the state tried to do this with infrared. They tried to do it with field counts, which is at night, look at a field and count the number of deer when they all, gather together. It doesn't work well at all. So in every area, even, Cornell and Cornell upstate too, I had spoken to some people up there, how do we count the number of deer that are locked on a fenced in area and they can't get that number? The state came up with a sightings per hour. And what that is an individual counts the number of deer they see while they're sitting still, number of deer per hour. And you take that matrix and you look at over time and you say, does it go down or does it go up? It's not how many you killed. It's not how many you saw, while you're driving around or doing other methods of surveillance. It's sitting still and seeing this. And laws of big numbers prevail over time. And that's what we have here. We have thousands of hours, probably have close to 10,000 hours here of individuals sitting still, counting deer. And I've graphed that in this presentation. So you'll see how the number either decreases or increases depending on what we're seeing at the time.
This is year to year.
This is, yeah, you'll see
And do
over
they
the past 5
sit in
years.
the same places year to year?
Across Sagaponic, the deer move.
Yeah, well, there are deer runs and there are places where the deer don't go,
Right.
so.
So what we do is we have it in each area, basically by road, and then I have it as an overall average across all of Sagaponic. So I have both of those things, so yes and yes. Depending on what the deer are eating, the deer will shift, all over Sagaponic. Within a 2-week period, they might be all the way to Corner and Bridge. And then once the wine, once they can smell those grapes, they'll move completely up to Wolford. And I'm talking 50 to 80 deer will move. And we have cameras and we have individuals watching, over time, so we can get that information.
Mhm.
I kind of wish the DEC wanted this more, so I gather more data than they even want. So some days they'll ask me for it and we'll have it. But it's important for you guys to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. That last presentation was interesting. If you didn't notice, there's deer browse on a lot of those arborvitae and the different things here. That's where I know where to put hunters too. I can drive around properties and look and say, okay, make sure this guy's there, make sure this guy's here. And we'll talk to the homeowners and say, are you having problems? Or they'll call me. Enough of them have my personal phone number and they'll call me and say, there's deer here now, can you come? And literally I'll shift hunters from one area to the next. Public dissatisfaction. In an area like Sagaponic, we're not gonna come in here with high-powered rifles and wipe out all the deer. We're never gonna do it. It's gonna cause too much dissatisfaction just along those lines. But depending on how much deer are causing the dissatisfaction is where I come in. Brody, we talk about this, we don't get a lot of complaints. I invite people to call me with complaints so that I can go and address it. But we've seen less and less, which is actually good. Deer car accidents, I'm seeing a lot less. I used to drag out a lot more than I do now. On Nymer's property, I used to pull, 10 to 15 a year off a property. Deer getting hit on Sag Main. The faster the road, the more deer get hit. That's typically what happens. And I'm seeing less and less over time, which is good. I don't think people are leaving the deer there. I have the maps on it. Okay, we can go to the next page here. Basically, what we did is we built a tool, and it's specific to Sagaponic, where you're able to get DMP, deer management permits. So we can get more tags in Sagaponic. We have them stored here. So when hunters are out, I say, take as many as you can. There's no limit to the number of deer we can take here. And that's always the hunter's answer, well, I didn't have a tag. So Rhodey has a bunch here, and then we keep some in the garbage cans in the back behind the shed back here, so they never run out of tags. And they're not allowed to let a doe pass to wait for an antlered deer. The hunters that hunt for me are volunteers. They don't pay into a program. When hunters pay into a program, they feel they deserve to wait for an antlered deer. I don't do that. I don't charge the hunters anything, but I require them as their kind of payment to be part of the program is they have to take every doe they see. They're not allowed to say, I'm gonna let it pass. Where if they paid $800 a year, they might say, well, this is kind of like me being on a paid hunt. I'm gonna wait for $1. So that's not the case. They're allowed to take male deer. I don't have restrictions on them at all in Sagaponic. So they have 2 male deer tags. I like them to use them here if possible. And every doe tag that we have, we try to use as an individual's, hunting. Okay. That is certified hunters. Basically what I do is every hunter that's here, you can see at the end of this program, we have pictures of their driver's license, their hunting license, their arrows. And people ask me why they're arrows. If we find an arrow in an area that it shouldn't be, you can send me a picture of that arrow and I'll be able to identify it. And arrows, yes, they could change the color of their fletching, they could change the type of the arrow, but everyone here would have a unique arrow based on the length of their draw and the strength of their bow. So I can look at an arrow and basically say, this would be these few people that have this arrow. Like I told the story last year, an arrow hit a house in North Haven. And within 7 minutes, I was able to give the DEC and the police, everybody who was in the area who was hunting, what type of arrows, what type of car, who their driver's license plate was, and what their car looked like. they were able to look at cameras, ring cameras from the houses, and the car that was down the block that day was not a Woods and Waves hunter. It was not a Woods and Waves vehicle, and the arrow was not a Woods and Waves arrow. And they found the person that did it, and it wasn't one of us. So those things, often the hunter doesn't like to have to identify himself on that, but I require them to. We want them to be as responsible for themselves as I am for them. Scheduled hunts. Every hunter here has to check in and check out. So if you say, who's in the field right now? I could look on my Google calendar and see exactly who's in the field, where they are, and I have their phone number, so we can call them at that minute. So often they'll say, oh, I saw somebody on a property. I'll say, well, we're not there. This is where they are. Or if a homeowner says, I let your guy come to the property today. I didn't realize my kids are getting out of school early. I'd like you not to be here. No problem. Call the hunter, they come out. So I've never had an issue with it, but when they get out, they have to log the hunt back through a Google type app. And they say how many deer they saw, how many hours they hunted, and all that information gets filtered back into these reports. Extended hunting season. Essentially here we hunt from October 1st through April 1st. We choose that. We have permits to hunt 365 days a year. We choose not to go past April 1st, purely because of the number of people that are running on the streets or completely legal, but we don't want to upset, the residents. If we're back in the woods over there and there's more problems, we can continue to hunt on these properties that are out of sight if there are too many deer in that area. And you can also call me, hey, I have a deer that's on a property that's injured. Can you come get it? You need a nuisance permit to go get that deer. Otherwise, you have to wait for the police. The police can't shoot it because they can't discharge a weapon. I can come get it. I can legally use a bow to, dispatch the deer humanely and get it out of there. You don't have to wait for it. You just call me and I take care of it usually within a couple hours, we get it done. And we have the permits for us all season long. I handle all the paperwork for you guys. At the end of September, I have to submit it to the DEC, show the deer that we took, rewrite another deer management plan, which I use this. I just kind of change a few things on it. So you never have to worry about that paperwork not being submitted, and it's under your name. So even though I manage it, it's under your name. So you don't like me, you want to change me, I set everything up so that you can change it if you needed to. Property access obviously is key. The small properties are as important as the big properties. We were able to take 15 deer on one small area because we had access to the backside of a field that we hunt, and it was a transition to the deer that go down onto white fields down over there. We know where the deer came through. So we sat there and we were able to take 10 deer in a very short time.
Massacre.
Part of what we do too, besides just taking the deer, is we displace deer. And I don't know how upset you're all gonna be by me telling you, we push a ton of deer in both directions. By having, 132 and 160 hunters, at 167 on this one here, we displace the deer because the deer don't want to be where we are. And Bridgehampton, I had a conversation, we talked about it this week, on Mecox with a resident saying, I've never seen so many deer here. And she's been there for 40 years. And that's because we're putting so much pressure, they don't swim across. On Bridge Lane, we used to see 30 or more deer on those fields and those backs of those houses. Now you'll see 15. On the other side of the water, you'll see 20. While I'm sitting there in the tree in the corner of the property, we can count 20 deer on the other side of the water. They were on this side of the water either earlier in the season or last year. North of the highway, how many deer do you see now up in those fields? More than I've ever seen, and I've been here my whole life. Over in Wainscott. Wainscott is overflowing with deer now because the pressure here is more than in Bridgehampton and Wainscott. So I would say equal to the number of deer that we harvest, we displace. And that's as important. That's what deer do. They move away from hunting pressure.
Did you say you work in Bridgehampton and Wainscott also?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
I'm all for deer management, just so you know.
Sure. That your incorporated village makes it possible to do a lot of the things that I do. Even Waynescott is not the way they have an association, but it's not incorporated the way Sagaponic is, so they can't get nuisance permits the way you guys do.
Right.
So there's a big part of why it works so well here. And just
And North Haven and Shelter Island.
right, exactly. North Haven, Shelter Island, East Hampton Village. But getting involved and you all being a team with me is why things work. In areas where the board doesn't help, it is not successful. And I've seen it, and I've walked away from multiple places saying, you're asking me to do something that can't be done. You know, if you have a deer in a 5-acre fence and you think you're gonna get that deer out, deer just keep doubling back. You can't get that deer out. With a dog and an open fence, you can. If you don't know that, you'll never get it done. And Sagaponic is unique in the way we handle deer in this area. So, okay, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. We removed 639 deer here. What that means, and you'll see as it goes further down, each doe here produces 2 fawns. And I talked to the DEC, so it'll go below this. I talked to the DEC about using these statistics, and I said, can I say if I take a doe, it's not gonna produce 2 fawns? And she said, where? This is Leslie. And I said, in Sagaponic. She goes, have you ever seen the does with more than 2? I said, yes, a lot of the does we take, or the does that we see, have 3 fawns here. Not common, but it happens in Sagaponic because you have so much food. There's probably more food here than any village I've ever dealt with, sheerly because of the open space and what people plant. So it makes the deer healthy. The deer are not starving here. They're very healthy, they're fat, and they have 3 fawns because they can do it. So what it looks like here, you typically pay $230 per deer. For every deer that's removed, if you did all the math over time, it's $230 per deer. When you have other programs, it's typically $1,000 a deer to remove or to use birth control or things like that. Here, the number typically will go down as the numbers go up. You scroll up a little bit. There are, if you look below, go up a little bit more. We took 504 female deer since we started here. That's 1,008 fawns not being born. And that's at one snapshot. So if those deer lived, and deer will live 8 years, each one of those deer, and they have fawns up until 11, 12, 13 years old. An old deer still has fawns. People say, oh, they stop having fawns. I've never seen a deer too old to have fawns. I know it happens, but I've never seen it. So we're looking at another 1,000 fawns that would still be here because those deer lived 5 years. We've had the program for 5 years. We'd have 1,000 more deer here if we didn't have the program. And it's hard to count deer, but this is something that the DEC approved me using these statistics. And that's kind of what I'm looking at most, is to say, how do you stop 504 deer for 5 years having 2 fawns apiece? And that's only one year. Would it be 5,000 fawns? No, because some fawns die of natural causes. They die of cars. A lot of things happen, but you would have 1,000 deer more here if you didn't have this program. Okay, you're looking at 1,600 deer if you counted the males too. Okay, you can move up. Does everybody understand that concept though, how that works? Okay, we had 85 properties here. I've noticed, we've been here enough now to see that some people move out, some people move in, some people that have never wanted deer hunting all of a sudden want deer hunting. Some people that had deer hunting are saying, you know what, I don't think I need it now. So it kind of comes and goes. So what we do every August, Rhodey and I get together and we write a letter, to the whole village. And we say, if you want deer hunting, we're here. It's, it's basically free to you. You come, we help you out. This is what's going on. And we've seen it, kind of ebb and flow. And 85 properties is plenty enough to manage the deer in Sagaponic. But I think there's over 900 parcels, we said.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see about 250. I'd like to see 25% of the properties. And I can't make that happen. People have to be willingly, wanting that to happen. I don't think we need to knock on doors. I think the mailings are just fine. I think 85 properties, I don't have 85 hunters a day needing a spot here. So I think we have plenty to work with, although I do wish, to try to get more, every year going forward, just so that as deer move into other areas that I can't get to, now I can. Parsonage Pond Lane is like that. We didn't have it for years. We were invited in there and we took a ton of deer out of there the first year. Then it quieted down, and that's what's supposed to happen. Some of the ticks, I mentioned a couple things about ticks. North Haven has 4 posters, and I count the number of ticks per deer when I harvest the deer about 4 times a year. And you guys don't have 4 posters, so I compare it to here and I compare it to other places. And different times a year, there's more ticks or less ticks. If you go to Riverhead, I don't know why, they have 3 times as many ticks as you guys have. It's just, you know, what happens. I talk to Cornell Cooperative Center. They don't necessarily give me answers on it, but I do have some of that data. If you wanted to know what a 4-poster did or what it didn't do, I can kind of give you, I try to stay impartial on that. That's not my expertise. So I just collect data and I store it and I give it to, you know, the tick people when they ask me. Again, native vegetation gets beat up around here. We can go up. Okay, this is about the exact number of deer. This is what I was just saying. The smaller herds, but you're still seeing herds. Okay, scroll up. Okay, this is I graphed the sightings per deer over time. When we first obviously came into Sagaponack, you were almost 2 deer per hour sitting. And that's the highest I've ever seen. That number is off the scale. Upstate, these numbers are like, you see where it says 0.6? It would be 0.15 is what they see upstate. 0.25 is a healthy number. You're about 0.55 right now, I believe, or 0.65. So that's what's happening over time. So we're seeing a continued drop of the number of sightings per hour, and that's the best way I can count the deer in Sagaponack. It's not uncommon for it to blip back up and blip back down, depending on where the deer are. But knowing that we pushed them out into Bridgehampton and Wainscott, if we didn't hunt for a year, it wouldn't be the number of deer that we killed per se. It would be the number of deer that come back. That would make that blip go right back up again. I wouldn't say, you know, up to 2, but I would imagine it would go up to at least 1.1. But, you know, so far so good. We're keeping them at bay, and that's what we're going to continue to do. Okay, and these are all state statistics. So when they read this is their language. So when they're looking at something like this, when they ask for a deer management program, I give them this and they go, oh, okay, thank you. They don't ask me for more information. They've never actually asked me for more information. We give them more than they need. They don't answer us, but that's fine. This is the summary of the hunt results. These are the areas broken down into, you know, basically roads. I don't give exact addresses. I give zones to kind of keep, you know, people's privacy. So if you want to see where we're taking deer, what it looks like year over year, this this chart will kind of show you that. And these are the numbers over the year, and they kind of stay the same. And everyone says, well, how are the numbers the same? I hunt to that number. I try to get 125 to 150 deer. So what if I'm not getting that number, I'll put more pressure. I'll hunt longer into April if I need. There's very limited shotgun, but there is some shotgun here. I'll, you know, interview a few more individuals that are capable of using a shotgun to bring those numbers up. So I try to make sure we get a minimum of that, you know, 100 to 125 deer. So that's why those numbers look similar, because I push that. And if you look at the number of hours to next to it, the first year, I only hunted 800 and something hours to get 100 and something deer there. Now I'm hunting 1,800 hours to get 132 deer. So 121 and 132 is basically, that's pretty close to the same. But to have to double that number to get the same number of deer, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for numbers where we can say it takes a lot more time to get the same number of deer. So if next year I'm not getting the deer, I'm going to increase the hunting hours, put more hunters out, ask more permissions, so we get that 120 to 130 number, and that 1,800 will likely be 2,200 next year. So we have to push more and more until we have a diminishing return.
So you're not hunting now? It's
We're not hunting now.
1st to April 1st. So when you are hunting, are there hunters inside every day?
Yes,
Yeah. And how many hunters are here a day?
between 1 and 20.
That depends. Why is it such a big thing? Is it
Because on
weekend and?
Because Wednesday individuals don't have. On Saturday morning, I probably have 20 individuals that want to hunt. And let's say the wind is
Oh,
from
you
the,
have more on the weekend?
most guys are off on the weekend. I
Yeah.
should say people. I have a lot of women hunters too.
Yeah.
So if the wind is from the north, a lot of the properties may not work because they only work for the south wind,
Mhm.
and vice versa. So I don't want to. This is a whole nother side of it. I hunt for them. I know it's going to be a good stand on a north wind. And if I put them in it on the south wind, you're just going to educate the deer.
Yeah.
So if it's an east wind, you have very few stands that are good for that wind. So I might only have 5 or 6 individuals out.
Mhm.
So I help them not make mistakes
Mhm.
by knowing where they should go. And they're happy to know that. They're like, oh yeah, put me in a good spot. They don't even, they don't even care as long as they get to see deer, they enjoy it. Another part of it is all the deer that we harvest here are used. You guys don't have it here, but we have a cooler box. So every deer that's taken from here goes into a cooler box and is aged anywhere between 7 and 10 days. That makes the meat much better for consumption. And it either goes to a food pantry, it goes to the individual hunter, it goes back to residents here that want it. But no deer is wasted that comes out of Sacramento. That's really important for me. I wouldn't do this program if that was the case. Okay. That's fine. We talked about that. Doing that right now. 250 properties. This is what each hunter has to give me. There's their driver's license. Sacaponic has created a hunter identification card. So Rhodey will have a stamp, Rhodey signs it, and from there, the hunter has to carry it with him. So if someone says, who are you? What are you doing here? One of the most difficult problems I have is a hunter getting stopped from going in the woods. A hunter being disturbed while he gets up 4 o'clock in the morning, lives in Huntington, drives all the way here, gets set up, gets ready to go in the woods, and someone goes, no, you shouldn't be here. And they call the cops and the guys to wait there. He wasted his whole morning. He was going to come in and take a deer for us. And now he wasted, half a day of his life because we didn't protect him from that situation. That little ID card does that. He pulls it out and says, I'm a certified hunter for Sacaponic. Here's my calendar. I'm supposed to be at this address today. If you have a problem, here's John's phone number. He will answer it right now. And 95% of the time, they get to move on and not be disturbed. They go in the woods, they get a deer successfully. And that's, thank you to you guys. It makes it a lot easier for us to continue doing what we're doing and not get disturbed and not stop the hunter for the day. If we have 20 people getting stopped on a Saturday, that's 20 hunts that we don't have. Hope that makes sense. This is a picture of his car, what it looks like. That's the picture of his hunting license, what it looks like. There's his license plate and the arrow. So when a police officer comes up to me or calls me and says, hey, I have a car parked on the side of the road here. It's on someone's property. I don't know who it is. I said, what's the license plate number? They give me the license plate number. And in 30 seconds, I say, here's the person's name. Here's a picture of their driver's license. I'll send that back to the police officer. And the hunters all know that I do this. And the police officer goes, oh, good, no problem. Let's move on. But if it's not his truck, then I say, no, that's not one of our hunters. That's not one of our properties. Continue doing what you're doing. Okay, scroll down. I break up Sacaponic into 4 different zones. And I do that because it's easier for me to talk about, in here and with hunters. And I may hunt zone 1 for a while, and then I skip to zone 3, then skip to zone 4. If you put too much pressure in one zone, deer get really smart and they avoid you. So knowing how to hunt this way is what we're doing. That's what this map represents. I have about 50 of these maps with deer at all different places, and I'll share them with the hunters and explain this is what we need to do, this is why we need to do it. Okay, scroll down. It's kind of hard to see from this point here, but all those little red spots are areas that we hunt. And part of the hunting program here is for it to be spread across Sacaponic. But when we first started this, we had heavy presence in the southwest, and we didn't have any presence in the middle of Sacaponic. So although we were taking deer, we really weren't reducing the population the way we wanted to, because they were just moving to different areas of Sacaponic where we weren't. So as one hunter records what he sees, I can look at where the deer were for the week, and I know which area I should send the hunter just by where the deer were earlier that week. They move to a separate area, I need to go to that area. Okay, this is what a map looks like, what I send a hunter. We actually don't hunt this property anymore, it was sold. So I give him a map like this. If you look up close, it shows where the car needs to be parked, it shows where the stand is. Bottom left-hand corner is a picture of deer. Those are, I have cell cameras that are connected to my cell phone on almost all these properties, and it shows you, okay, here are where the deer are gonna be. So I don't wanna say we've made it easy, but the hunter goes there, he knows where he's parking, he knows where the stand is, he knows where the deer are coming from, and he gets this map so he knows he's not in the wrong place. Okay, scroll down.
That's it, John.
At the end of it.
Going back to the zones,
Mhm.
what do the deer with the red arrows mean? Anything in particular?
That's where they move. That's where I've seen deer moving to and from.
Okay.
I do surveillance, so I'll sit here an hour before dark and watch the roads and watch where the deer cross. You learn more from that sometimes than sitting in the woods. If you go to Hedges and have somebody down off Potato Road and somebody on Hedges and somebody up on Herb Court, they'll see the same deer within 15 minutes. The deer will come out of the bedding ground in Potato. They'll cross Daniels. They'll come through the field Galban or the New Peconic Land Trust piece. They'll wait until almost dark. Then they'll shoot across Hedges. They'll cut through Old Barn, and then end up in the fields between there and Herb Court. And I'll see the guys texting. They're here now. They're here now. They're here now. They're here now. And that enables us to be able to be more effective in the way they hunt. And that's what these maps do for me and the hunters. If someone's going somewhere, I'll send them this map saying, this is the movement of the deer on a southwest wind. So they know what's happening. And really good hunters that get the big giant bucks typically don't go hunt does. And yet those are the ones you need because they'll take more deer than 20 of the other guys. So when I give them a map like this, it gets them excited. It says, all right, I'm gonna come in and help you out. So I've been able to bring in hunters that are of a higher level because they get to kind of look at the mental game of it. And you've seen it, you know who's good and who comes in, and the guy that comes in and gets, I have one guy get 47 deer by himself this year. Those are the ones you want, to continue the program and not leave and either go to another property or just not want to be part of it because they're too constricted.
How many deer have you seen from disease, dead from disease?
Okay.
There was a big disease going around.
Blue tongue disease, and it's not chronic wasting here. There's another disease. I forgot about it. It's very similar to blue tongue disease. It's a midge or a gnat that bites the deer inside their nose. They come out of the mud around water. Certain areas of Long Island had it really bad. The DEC says only 15% of the deer die from it. I had deer floating in Nyrie's Pond, and they died from it. It was a blue tongue disease, and I could see by the way they excrete mucus out of their eyes and different areas of their body, and their liver and their lungs show spots or striations, so you know that that's how that deer died. In Amagansett, by the Peconic Land Trust property on Town Lane, and the deer, they probably lost 35 of the 35 deer. I found every one of them dead. Here, very few, and if they are dying, they're in the swamp by the ponds, so you're seeing less of them. You think you would see them over in Parsonage Pond, but I'm not seeing them. In Southampton by Atlantic Golf Course and Scuttle Hole by the traffic circle there, they were decimated. Almost every single deer that I knew was there was on camera, all died. So here, because of the layout of the land and the way the water is, you're not seeing as many. And if you had problems, I would get all the phone calls. I would get phone calls like crazy if your deer were dying of it. You're gonna lose 25 deer a year at least, maybe more. I'm not seeing them. I found 2 last year. And this year it happens in August is when you see it, August and early September. So if anybody complains of, I have a dead deer in the middle of the lawn for no reason, that's typically what it is.
That, do you know if that is detrimental to like dogs?
No,
No,
it's not. If we don't get it, dogs don't get it. It's
just a deer.
It's a
thing.
deer thing, yeah. And you
That's
know
good.
what? It's the way, that's how nature handles it.
Yeah.
And some people aren't so upset and say, well, maybe, too bad we lose more from it. And ironically, North Haven has a what a four-poster program is. It's like they feed them corn and they get permethrin on a deer's neck. I'm not finding any in North Haven. So I think the permethrin is keeping the net or the midge away from the deer because it's on their head. So now this is no one has said this to me. I kind of came up with this. I can't confirm or deny it, but I'm not finding any dead deer there. And very few here, and the ones I found here are all almost by Sagaponic Road and over there. That's where I
Do
found
they
all
die
the-
quickly from that? I mean, how do you know if you got a deer and then put it in the freezer and
Okay.
ate it?
Mhm.
If it had it or not?
I've seen it and it's not pretty. They can die in about, I think they said 46 to 76 hours, they can die from it pretty quickly.
Okay.
But every deer that I've seen it, you know it right away. Again, they excrete out of their eyes, their ears.
Yeah, but before that, I mean, if you killed a deer.
They said it actually doesn't hurt you.
Okay,
They said it doesn't hurt you, but I'd rather not eat it
yeah.
if I knew.
So John, you can tell after you harvest the animal.
Oh, yeah.
If it's
Yes.
the meat is diseased.
When you clean out, when you take the innards out of a deer, the first thing you'll see is little lesions on the liver and striations. Like you see the line on it.
Yep.
And when I saw that, I called the DEC and I said, hey, something's kind of weird here. And also, we took a deer where the fat was yellow. And I called the DEC in and they went and looked at it. I didn't get an answer on what it was, but they think it was one of the diseases. And they said this came up from South Carolina during warm weather patterns, and it brought this little midge up. I've been here my whole life. I've never seen it. And, over the past, this would be the third year, I believe, that it's going to be present. I'm expecting to lose 15%.
You, or your boys have, or girls, do you have girl hunters?
Yeah.
Uh,
I had to go get 3 in one day last year.
Does there appear to be any indication that the foxes are getting
That are getting,
some of the deer? I think Lee and I had this conversation yesterday.
you asked me if foxes kill deer.
Fox are going after the
Any
fawns.
deer?
Oh yeah, they get the fawns all the time.
Yeah.
That's
You guys see any indication of how many there?
foxes ebb and flow too with mange and rabbits. When a rabbit season spikes, so does the fox. When a rabbit number spikes, so does the fox, and they kind of follow that. What a deer has that a rabbit doesn't have is a mama. And the fox could go after the fawn, but that mother, I've watched, female deer run a fox down, like not even 50 yards. I saw it run through the woods, ran that fox into the next county.
I have several big fox down at Probine.
Yep.
And the geese go after the
The
fox.
geese go after the foxes, yeah.
Protect their babies, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They look good this year too. The foxes look really good this year. I have
Yeah, I
those
do.
cameras, and they're full. They're pretty. I have a no shoot too. My hunters don't shoot foxes. We don't allow it. So that's another thing. If the foxes are taking fawns, they're helping us. That's nature. It's part of
Yeah,
life.
right.
We do take turkeys. We talked about it. We said we started taking some turkeys for the number of turkeys that are out here. Yes, they do eat ticks, but they also bring ticks. So I think we had 6 turkey hunters for this in May. First was the first turkey season, and 5 of the 6 were successful in taking a turkey. And if you've never had wild turkey, you should try it sometime. It's kind of like grape juice against a really good wine.
My dog got a turkey.
Any other questions that again, as we all start to learn the program, more and more, you'll understand it more. I haven't had any complaints. There's very few people who are anti-hunters that have caused issues. I've had people call me and I said, I'll meet you for lunch. And I'll sit and I'll talk to people and I say, I understand your point. This is what I do. They just kind of get the idea that we're just being wasteful And not being wasteful makes us feel a lot less pressure from these different groups. And I think after the ticks and the accents and things like that, most anti-groups have backed off almost completely from what I've seen in my lifetime. It started out here and now it's, you know, in pretty good shape.
They got old.
They did get old. The ones that are still involved. I do some things for, I mean, John DeQuavis isn't around anymore, but I used to go to, you know, his house in Amagansett, and he brought a bunch of women from Smith College. And they were not hunters, I can tell you that. And after we spent 4 hours together, you know, walking through the woods, explaining it, I'm even showing them the bow, and then we had a venison lunch. And, you know, out of like 29 out of 30, you know, wrote me letters saying, you know, I never thought that way, and now I understand the point and how it's done. So I'm happy to do that. I do deer butchering seminars for people. Not everybody wants to get involved in that, but I do these things, you know, as part of Woods and Waves that are completely free for everybody. I did a women's butchering seminar. It was all women, and I butchered a deer, and they butchered a deer right next to me, and it was pretty cool. They did a great job. Great.
The village clerk should sign up for that. It's a skill set. That should be a mandatory skill set for the village.
My spare time. Well, we can attest, I don't know, maybe it was 12 years ago, 14 years ago, when we had this, well, the room was smaller then, full of anti-hunting issues. And you're right, the tide has changed via education.
Mhm.
And that meeting, I feel like we did it on a Saturday, didn't we, or something? Something different about it. But anyway, that meeting was adamant and very emotional, and look how civilized we can say. It's over a decade, at least,
Yeah.
that we've been able to start handling our deer problem and have little or no complaints. I mean, I'm sure there's always going to be one.
But the complaints are the other way. The reason why I'm standing here is because residents complain, and they expect the mayor to do something about it.
Mhm.
And I'm seeing this. I'm getting calls from Shoreham. I'm getting calls from Port Jeff. I'm getting calls all the way west. And they said, well, what do we do about it? And I would say, you need a program. Oh, we can't do that. We can't do a program. We can't, you know. So I stay away. I don't need it. This is a very nice, happy, calm life for me. You know, I'll keep it.
Well, our first attempt to try anything hit a wall, and obviously we're 5 years into our second attempt, and we appreciate you doing it.
Thank you. Yeah, the whole, I guess it was using rifles and things like that didn't work well, right? With residents.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
through the county, and
Yeah.
it was not done properly.
Yeah, they do it in Connecticut State Park and a few other places like that where they can shut the park down.
Mhm.
And they do it in Lloyd Harbor. They do it in a few places like that. But I've never seen it really successful long term. I see them come in and they ask me to do it. My guys, and I have people that are certified to do that. But I say no in the areas that I'm in, because it's not, you can't shut the doors to Sagaponic and say, okay, we're not going to use this property for, you know, the next 2 weeks, and we're going to deal with it this way. Where at State Park you can. So,
Okay, can we move on?
Thank you, John.
okay,
Thank you.
John.
thank you all.
Great.
Yep, I'll see you soon.
Love what you're doing.
I appreciate it. I like the too.
Thanks. You have a job you love. That's great.
Approval of minutes, April 19th, that's one we had at our last meeting. Did anyone else have corrections to that? I'll make a motion to approve them.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the other one is the 31st?
Yes. that's
Okay,
correct.
I wasn't there for that meeting. Do somebody want to move that? Or that correction?
I didn't have any. I can move it, but I'm not always the best checker. It's my art eye. Anyone want to second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. And that's it for the moment, right?
I'll catch up.
Town Police Department report, we did that already. Traffic calming safety measures. What I'd like is prior to July 3rd, whatever road improvements you folks would like to look at for the fall program, get it written to Rhodey so she can distribute it. So before the meeting, we can all, kind of look at what everybody's priorities are. That'd be by July 3rd. And let's see, the local law number 4 about gates. Now I was told, Carrie, you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I just didn't think the gate issue should die on the vine. The local law maybe should die, but we should still talk about gates.
Some other variation of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, since I talked to you this morning.
Yeah.
I missed this meeting, I was out of the country, of the last architecture meeting. And Tom White had a gate discussion and several styles were chosen, it says in the minutes of that meeting. And I need to get to Tom, and I promise I'll have that for the July meeting and see where exactly they are, if they have chosen or they've decided on the styles. And
And Lisa, just to or expound on that, they did discuss them, and I asked Tom, to please give me something other than a picture of something. I needed something that like a design type of
design
thing,
discussion.
and I never got it.
So I'll
So,
make sure you get it. I just read this literally at 2:30 when I came in, when I was trying to get the minutes, because I was out of the country for the meeting, from Pat, and these are the unofficial draft minutes, guys. So initially, that will give us, hopefully, if they're looking at it, let's take their data, and I agree with Carrie, and then we can all have an intelligent discussion about it.
So there's no way that we can change things without making a law, I guess. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it needs to be noticed. So if
I
you
do
change it, yeah, you'd have to re-notice, go through it again.
I do have one question. If the AHRB does come up with 4 designs, is that more policy
Yes.
than in the code itself?
Yep.
I mean, I guess it could be put in the code, but it would be more of a policy.
There's 2 ways they can
And
do
not
it.
a law.
If they want to stick to the policy, if the ARB wants to adopt the policy and stick with it, they can. But the clearest way the code speaks is through the board, right? So the board has the restrictions now that says no gates in the historic district, and then the setback requirements, 20 and 40, depending upon how big the property is. That's all the code says. The proposal was to eliminate gates completely and say no new gate applications, take it away from the ARB. There was the undercurrent of, well, look, give us some flexibility and have them come up with 4. If the ARB does adopt, and the Board of Trustees wants to leave it with them, they adopt like a design board, almost like a design board that says these are the 4 that will go through easily, they could do it, and the layout and those kind of things. They could definitely say this is the design board the ARB is adopting. If it goes against what the Board of Trustees, because this board is the ultimate decider, if it goes against the intention of the Board of Trustees, you can always intervene and step in that.
Right, the idea was if they had kind of semi-approved designs, somebody could come in, get a permit and move on versus coming back 3 or 4 times to fiddle with it.
Correct.
Yeah, just to speed it up. I guess if you want to fit, say, no, I want this, then you're going to be there for months.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And on a good note, reading this today, right before the meeting, actually, it appears that the message is getting out because 2 driveway gates were rather quickly approved with not a lot of note problems because the people were actually listening to what the board was saying. And prior to that, we've had that back and forth thing going on where, no, I want the wrought iron one with the metal filigrees on it. That type of thing. And I think the message is getting out there, as difficult as that meeting was, the public hearing and a lot of upset people. I feel that this is the first meeting I've seen. And I'm sorry I wasn't there, but that maybe they're listening to our board a little after that. So it could be positive, but I like what they're doing, the board. We just have to make sure that we can protect them so they can do it.
Right. And if they have difficulty, if they get pushback and they do adopt a policy, they get pushback, this board can always adopt that as a future local law amendment to say, prohibited in the historic district, the setbacks, and these are the 4.
Are they looking to make the setbacks further back?
They've been trying to do that verbally, and on the one of the 2 that they approved this past meeting, it won't be seen at all from the road. So,
That's good.
and it was one of our local contractors, so that was impressive that the message got out there.
I got the impression from that one meeting that was combined with the dogs, that there was a board member that didn't see that given 2 or 3 or 4 designs is gonna speed anything up for their meetings. She seemed to think that if they gave them 4, they'd want to tweak number 3 or heighten number 2 or whatever. And,
Well, but then the AHRB could just stick to their guns and say, no.
Or we'll go from 4 to 3.
Maybe
How about
then we, as a board, give them the backup. We give them the backup to say, no. This is what we want our board to be able to do easily.
It's the difficulty of the ARB based on what their charge is, right?
Yeah,
We are a very clear board, law, black, white. Do not pass go, red light, the board of trustees is relatively easy. The ARB is very subjective.
yeah.
So while there may be 4 inspirational designs, we're just not gonna say all gates are gonna be blue from now on, right? Maybe it's light blue, maybe it's a shade of blue, maybe it's angled, so the ARB does have that chart, but they're going through training this summer to discuss some of the
Like 10,
parameters.
yeah. So I
So
think
they're gonna
that's good.
discuss
Who trained them?
variances, John from my office.
Oh,
has a
oh, good.
program together for them, so that should be helpful.
Yeah.
Moving on. Assembly permit. Copywriting club.
Yeah.
We were happy with that, right? That they're doing the same program they've always done.
And there's never.
Yeah, we just approved that, right?
Did we approve?
Did we want to talk about it again?
Oh, sure. Well,
It
whatever.
was
Did you think
just,
there's something
it
else?
was it an application last time or
Yes,
just?
it was.
Yeah,
We
okay.
talked about it last week. You went through it
Yeah.
last week with the board, but yes, that's a full application.
Right, it's the 2 Wednesdays, 7:30 to 5:30, 145 people involved, 100 places to park the cars in the paddocks. And the bathrooms, and I make a motion to okay this permit.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the next is the sockeye party. Now they,
That is new from
yes, this is for July 29th. I believe that's a Saturday. From 3 to 11. They call it a day party, but notice it's over at 11 at night. And yeah. So there are about 130 people involved, and they expect around 40 vehicles. And there is a valet company, East End Investigation and Security. And that's all they've given us.
This
And-
has happened in the past.
Yeah.
I would say for the past 5 years.
Yes.
Since we bought the
he's-
property.
I don't know.
Do you really want to say so?
No. So, I guess they will be parking the cars. It said that they were gonna show a map of the car parking, but I don't see it.
It's on the side of the road if you look at the description. That's the description.
So one side,
Right, so they'll put them on one side of the road. I will work with Mr. Proctor and make sure that he doesn't clog it through. Former police officers, so should know that. But I'll check with him to make sure. Probably isn't gonna need the other side. But I'll go.
He's in Sagaponic. Or you have the Sagaponic address?
Yes, Sagaponic.
So I make a motion to allow this assemblage permit.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And Gibson Beach, they want to have a clam bake for a small amount of people, 20 on July 22nd. That's another Saturday from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. And we discussed this already with thoughts that the clam bake truck do all he has to do and then park somewhere, not in the end by the beach where. Correct. So
other people can,
yeah,
for the night, get
go
in.
through. Do we need any other information on this?
No, and as I explained last week, technically, when it's a party under 50, there is no requirement to get an application, but
You're gonna have a
because,
fire.
right, well, because you're dealing with public property and a caterer who's making money off of public property, in order to capture these smaller events like this one, I created that form.
Yep.
And so, as I said last week, you will not see these before you for approval going forward, because sometimes I'll get it on, 2 weeks before, there won't be an opportunity to put it before you. And our code says any event over 50 is when you would approve it. But I would give you the information if this happens. So
Did they file for an open pit fire?
there's a little fire, and that was the other piece of it is you're just going down, small amount of people, just going down to have a contained, fire in like a fire pit, a contained pit.
Yeah.
That's the other form that I created to allow that to happen and not have to deal with literally what you have to go through with the town of Southampton to get these permits. If it's gonna be a big bonfire, then yes, you gotta go to the town of Southampton to get that permit from the fire marshal. But these are just small events that we want to manage down at Gibson Beach. And this is only at Gibson because we don't have anything to do with Sac Main or Peters Pond, and we will not allow anything down at Town Line because there's no parking, and it would be
Yeah.
ridiculous for us to.
All right, I'll
allow
make a
anything
motion.
down
Does
there.
anybody want to discuss this?
No,
Any questions? I make a motion that we allow this permit.
Second?
All in favor?
And just, those are the forms, so if you have any comments, even going forward on the way it can be changed or altered or bettered or whatever, just let me know. Because
This
that
would
was
be
the,
good this summer to see how it works. I mean,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm
because
saying.
the clam bake companies and
Yeah.
the Red Chair Company
Yeah.
last year were there every weekend
Yeah.
and residents were having upsets because they couldn't use Gibson Beach for just a private night,
Mhm.
so.
I don't see where it says that the clam bake truck will be parked. Anywhere else.
It's gonna be part of the condition of approval. So when I write the letter to tell them that they were approved, that condition is that you cannot block the entrance to,
Okay,
so it's gotta park.
so
in a
it'll be one
parking
of these
spot.
conditions here.
Yes.
It's not in there
We're
yet.
gonna add it,
Okay.
yes, and I can add it on there or in the written approval.
Yeah.
It'll be on the permit that you cannot park or block any of the entrance to the beach. You have to park in a parking spot.
Yep. That's it.
organizational meeting, we vote on that?
Yes, you do.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because last year at the organization meeting, the resolution was to have it on the first Monday, which was Monday at July 3rd. So you're
Right.
changing it from what was approved last year. So yes.
Okay. Make a motion to change, set the organizational meeting for the 23-24 fiscal year to Friday, July 7th
Yep.
at 10 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Revision of the fee schedule.
Okay, so I've suggested a few changes to the fee schedule. And I've highlighted them in yellow. So they're in your book. And- Oh, so there's more than the one, right, so the first one, on page 1, you'll see a 3-month building permit extension. So we currently have, we got a building permit, it goes for a year. You can get 2 3-month extensions that you don't have to pay additional money for. So that's 18 months that you get to have your project. Without a doubt, at the end of those 18 months, we always get a request. I'm just waiting for paperwork, Board of Health, I'm just. So I'll check with John. Are you banging any nails? Are you doing this? No, just waiting for paperwork. So we would give them a courteous 2 up to no more than a month to get the paperwork in, depending on, and it's an individual thing. But after 18 months, and if you haven't gotten it done by then, because they don't want to renew it, they don't want to renew the whole permit. So my suggestion is, okay, after 18 months, if you're still waiting for paperwork, then fine. You pay us $500 and you can have an additional 3 months to get all your paperwork together. You're not paying the whole, building permit fee, but we're getting something for the
Yeah,
aggravation.
Sounds good to me.
Pleading because they're.
Your
they're
time is
just-
money.
That's right, Lisa. So I thought this was clean cut. There is no decision. If you want another 3 months, it's costing you $500. Don't come begging to me. This is it. So that's what my suggestion is there.
You could take Gibson Beach.
Then- And then, so you'll see the 2 permits that you just approved also on the fee schedule. And the reason why these are on here is because, again, under 50, according to our code, you don't need one. So these are the ones only at Gibson Beach for a use permit. If it's under 49 or less attendees, it's gonna cost $200. And
Well, what's the
then,
2,500 you're talking about? That's something.
well, that's another thing.
Oh.
So then the Gibson small contained fire permit is $25. So those 2 were not on the permit or the fee schedule before.
Yeah.
So I'm asking to put that there. And I didn't highlight it, but I've also changed, it says the consultant's fees at number 1 underneath. Before I had $1,500 for any site plan review and $2,500 for any subdivision review. But this $1,500 is gone in 1 meeting, if not more. So it's not, it's not covering the cost of the
Of our
consultant fees.
professionals.
So that way, it's just $2,500 for any of the planning board applications. So that's the other part that I changed. So
That's brilliant.
if you
That's good.
agree with that, then
I think with the Gibson Beach thing, and you're there, around there. I mean, if somebody starts to make a business out of it where they tie up the beach so the local people can't walk through it, we might have to revisit it. I mean, we could try this.
Oh, no, I'll definitely keep my eyes
Yeah.
peeled.
and you're right, Bill, and this is the reason why this is in here, because under 50 people, there's no
Right.
requirement to have it, but this way we can keep track of
Exactly,
those
yeah, we'll
smaller
have a record of it,
events.
yeah.
And hopefully they're not.
Maybe we should make it 40.
The
Well, it probably
permit
will be there
itself.
for a
Oh,
while.
what do you mean, 40 people?
Yeah.
Well, then if we do this 40 here, then we gotta capture that 10, which means we have to redo the code.
What 10?
There in our code, our assembly
Oh, no, it
permit,
says 50?
it says 50
Oh,
or
okay.
greater.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
trigger.
never mind.
Right,
It's a trigger for the larger permit.
yes.
Yeah, I got it.
So there you go.
So do you want a resolution on the yellow highlights, for lack of better
Yeah, so you're just
terminology?
updating the fee schedule, which is dated June 21st, 2023, to reflect those changes that I just
Sure.
mentioned.
Make a motion to update the fee schedule.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, resolution to create second full-time clerical position. As you've noticed, Rhodey is struggling to keep up with minutes and a lot of other things between all the walking and so on and so on. And really do need to have somebody there more days helping out with that stuff, taking some of the walk-in burden and phone calls off of her.
And you did discuss this with the board
Yeah,
when you were doing the budget, so this
Right.
is in the budget for the 23-24.
I'll make a resolution resolved with the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sagaponic does hereby create a full-time position of office assistant in the office of the village clerk treasurer. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I don't have the second resolution. I just have
You want
one.
mine?
Oh,
Sure.
no, You're right. Oh, no,
Got the
is that,
original
I
one.
gave you two the same one?
Yeah, two of the
Sorry.
same.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Is that not the same one?
No, this is the other one. that I
Okay,
missed.
that's the
Yeah.
one he's missing. Right.
And also, we're going to essentially promote Abby to a temporary position because at the moment, she's not positioned exactly right with civil service.
In other words, I have to pull her because she's full-time, now full-time, I have to pull that position from a civil service list. So it's a provisional hire right now, and as soon as I get her off the list, you'll see another resolution to get her off of the list number. So that will be down the line.
Yep.
Not sure I understood that, but okay.
I do. Service
Yeah.
requires any full-time position to be hired from a civil service list.
Mhm.
And so
She's not on the list yet.
she
She
is,
is.
she took the test.
The top
So,
position.
but now I have to get to her. So this is a provisional hiring right now.
Mhm.
You will see a permanent hiring
Okay.
once I get her off that list.
Yeah, the test is for the whole county, so there's
Provisional.
tons of people on the list.
Yeah, there's hundreds of people and the school district uses this list,
Yeah.
and police use this list for a clerical. It's like a huge list.
So if really doesn't want to call up the top person on the list, which is the top of the three, and have them come from that.
Reveal my strategy on the record.
Oh, sorry. Resolve, I'll make a motion, resolve that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sagaponic does hereby hire Abby Dermody provisionally for the full-time position of office assistant at a rate of $25.75 per hour, effective as of June 1st, 2023. Sorry about that elaboration.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Open interest.
Yeah, funding.
There we go.
And then, what's it?
So we're in the very last page, general fund 36, 312, 45, that's where I am. We're gonna approve payment of,
The general fund.
oh, okay, it's the one here on the handout. Make a motion to expend $36,312.45 from the general fund. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to expend $1,440 from planning and trust and agency fund. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I make a motion to expend $2,481.25 from the capital highway fund. A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Committee reports. Anything
I have a bunch.
unusual? Oh,
Oh,
nothing,
We can just pick
No.
out a few highlights.
I'll pick some highlights out, yeah.
Yeah.
The previous month zoning board was on rest, no applications. He had one this past month, this past week, actually, I'm sorry, on 471 Second Road, and it was closed in one meeting. The architect and John Woodsma, our building inspector, both spoke. They put down the information needed, and the board will be giving us their decision next month. So that's that until we hear the final public decision. Okay, architecture board, I'm gonna give you just a quick run through. They met May 22nd. It's always right after we have our meetings, so we always are kind of a month behind. There were 2 driveway gates. They were both approved. It appeared in the draft of the minutes of the meeting that everybody is working well this particular month with setting back their gates from the road, as well as putting forth applications that are respectful to the board's visual needs. Example, no wrought iron, no white solid gates that you can't see through, natural wood, stuff like that. So under old business, 1 Potato Lane was adjourned again. I feel like that's been a bunch of months that they've had that. And then 35 Sag Road, the applicant proposed re-signing and the removal of non-historic porch. Everything fit the committee's approval on that and was approved in that meeting. 608 Sag Main Street was adjourned. 416 Hedges Lane. Hold on. Sometimes people talk so much and the notes, it's like I go pages of notes before I get to the decision. I'm sorry. It was adjourned to next June. That applicant needs to bring more information. The demolition of 625 Hedges Lane was approved. This house was built in 1986, so it fits within our demolition outline, we'll call it. The following that demolition usually comes a house plan for the same lot. They presented their house plan and it was adjourned to next meeting after a lot of discussion. Glazing, bright windows, lots of light was discussed, and all that will come back in the next month.
Where was that, Lisa? I'm sorry.
625 Hedges.
620.
194 Erica's Lane was renovation, that was adjourned, and we are done.
Cool, thank
I
you.
tried to be efficient. They're meeting again this coming Monday at 12 o'clock.
Bill, have you got anything on your mind?
No, the only thing I do have just a question on do we have any bike routes going, bike races going?
Oh.
I feel like they're in the fall more than the springtime, am I crazy?
It seemed to me that we only had one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Good.
we should be happy, I guess.
Yeah.
my neighbor's working on 4,000 miles a year. I guess he's routine to does that.
Who's that?
Miller. Yeah, yeah. I saw him today. I was going one way, he was going the other. Yeah.
It's amazing.
What's that say?
Isn't that why they invented cars?
I don't know.
They're vicious.
That's great.
September 30th. And October 1st.
Right. September and October, Bill, so get
Okay,
ready.
thank you.
Get your bike shorts
I
ready.
just couldn't be, I don't know.
They all go by his house, that's why he's wondering.
Oh, yeah,
My
right.
house too.
Your house too, actually. And you know, they hit a bunch of us.
for lack of better term.
Carolyn, do you have anything to throw in the pot?
I
Okay.
One question, to whoever might know, probably Ruby. Sag Pond, do we,
I sent the emails, it still is not let yet.
no,
That means that they're working with the DEC to get permit to do it.
Okay,
this
all right.
time of year.
we're starting to lose, there's water coming up to the road
Yeah,
on Sag, Sag.
And we've been relatively dry. Imagine next week when all the rain is
It's
predicted.
terrifying.
I know.
It's
it
let
is.
itself out.
Do you have anything
Have
taken
lots
out?
of rain.
Not yet.
Not
It
yet?
will. If it rains, it will.
yeah.
They're
This week, they're over.
This
This
week
week is restrictions.
Yeah, it's gonna be
I don't know, I
awful.
think they almost had it closed off with the culverts. The roped off area.
Yeah,
Did you say it floods?
No, I mean that they haven't roped off, so they can't get to where they have to dig.
yeah, yeah.
Well, the birds are gonna be
The problem,
drowned pretty soon.
well, yeah, that's the problem is the coastal areas flood
Right.
when the pond's too high.
Yeah, but
We
to-
send
to
the
dig the
DEC,
thing.
no, I see.
Yeah,
Get the stuff in there, yeah.
We send the
yeah.
DEC the photos, it's like you're trying to save the birds, but they're, all that zone is flooded, the signs are.
Yeah, the birds are gonna drown.
So that's, I did send an email to the town trustees. They didn't respond, but
They
I'm
probably
sure
don't
that,
want
I'm sure they're well
emails.
aware of it and
Thank you.
they're working on it. But
When's the
I'll
next
see if I
full
can get
moon?
an answer when she's-
Oh,
That's scary.
Yeah.
12 days.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay,
Next meeting is, well, it's actually the 7th, is that it?
You
And
just
then,
said, yep.
Wednesday, the 12th. Did anybody want to make a speech? No? Banging your shoe on the podium?
Actually, you know what, please do that. I just wanted to report to the board that after the meeting we had with the police, there is a TCO that's in the area. I don't know if you've seen him, but he stopped
I've
in
seen him.
yesterday.
I've seen him.
He stopped in yesterday and he and Tyjon, who's the officer on duty yesterday, went through all the streets. And so he wrote 13 part.
All right, there we go.
Oh my gosh. And he was in again today.
If he gets trailers too, I'll be like,
oh. So just, when they leave their trailers there sometimes for 2 days.
Oh, yeah.
So they're.
can you adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? to
Aye.
adjourn? Aye,
Hi.
okay.
Should give it to-